Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome today's host, the Secretary General of the Industrial Association, Magister Christoph Neumeier.
Well, dear Mrs. President, Ms. President Osmani Saidou, Mr. President von Liechtenstein, Mr. President von Habsburg, Mr. President Kluczek, Honorable Member of the European Parliament, Lukas Mandl. It is a great honor for me to welcome you all here at the House of Industries for the ceremonial awarding of the Coudenhove-Kalergi European Prize. We have come together to honor an exceptional personality who has demonstrated great commitment to the political development of Europe, as well as to freedom and democracy in our continent. The President of the Republic of Kosovo, Ms. Vjosa Osmani Saidou, a very warm welcome. Well, the Coudenhove-Kalergi European Prize is awarded every 2 years to outstanding personalities who have made a significant contribution to the political understanding and integration of Europe. In times marked by geopolitical challenges and economic crises, personalities such as President Osmani Saidou remind us of the importance of a free, democratic, and united Europe. A united Europe does not only mean political stability, but also economic prosperity. As the Federation of Austrian Industries, we are deeply committed to strengthening the European idea. Achievements such as the common internal market, the free movement of people and services, or the mostly united stance towards countries outside of Europe are the foundation of our success. The Austrian industry stands firmly by this conviction and is a strong advocate of European integration. In this spirit, both Austria and the Federation of Austrian Industries support bringing the countries of the Western Balkans, including Kosovo, closer to the European Union. Today, we are honoring not only a political leader, but also a committed European who have consistently defended the values that unite us all, with courage, integrity, and foresight. President Osmani Saidou has always championed a strong, democratic, and pro-European Kosovo, and has demonstrated that even in challenging times, dialogue and diplomacy are the right paths to overcome conflicts. So with this in mind, I wish you all an inspiring and enjoyable evening. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you very much to the Industrial Association for making this evening possible. My name is Severin Meister and I have the honor of leading you through today's event. Let us all welcome Her Excellency President Dr. Vjosa Osmani Saidou and the first husband and their family. As well as His Imperial Royal Highness Archduke Karl, who's here together this evening with his sister Walburga. We would like to say a very warm welcome to the diplomatic corps, their excellencies, the ambassadors from Finland, Nina Vaskuliati, and of the Czech Republic, Jiří Sittler. As well as representatives of the ambassadors of Denmark, France, Hungary, and Taiwan. We would very much like to greet the many members of Parliament, starting with the European Parliament, Lukas Mandl. Members of the Austrian Parliament, Carmen Jaidler-Cincelli, Andreas Minic, Dominik Oberhofer, and Petra Oberrauner. who today is also representing the governor of Carinthia, as well as Hannes Taborski from the Viennese Parliament. On behalf of the Foreign Office of Austria, Roman Pable, and the many diplomats from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for the European unification movements, we would like to welcome the President of the International Pan-European Union, Bavo Paricic, and his wife, the President... Yeah. Presidents of Pan-Europa Kosovo, Ukraine, and Spain. The Secretary General of the European Movement of Austria, Elisabeth Dittrich. Walter Gerbautz, the Secretary General of PAN, as well as the Head of the Office of the European Parliament, Frank Piplat. And as it is impossible to do every one of you justice, I would like to greet Rüdiger Stix as representative of the Austrian Landsmannschaften, and Monika Rohan, who's here, and whose husband played an integral role as a diplomat in the negotiations for the independence of Kosovo. This is a very prestigious prize, and with this, and without much further ado, I would like to pass the word to the President of the European Society, Coudenhove-Kalergi, His Serene Highness Prince Nikolaus of Liechtenstein.
Madam President, Sir, first husband, dear family, glad that you could all come here. Excellencies, dear honorable members of parliaments, I would also like to greet the three pan-European presidents, of course Pan-European, Pan-Europa Union International, Professor Barisic, the honorary president of Pan-Europa Austria, Archduke Karl von Habsburg, and not least the actual president of Pan-Europa Österreich, Reinhard Klutschek, and I would immediately like to say our many thanks from our society, from the Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi European Society, for the work he has done, and Pan-Europa Austria for this evening, for having made possible that so many of you have come. Ladies and gentlemen, great pleasure to have you all here. In the name of the European Society, Coudenhove-Kalergi, I would like to welcome you all very specially here. Of course, the most important welcome and most pleasurable welcome is to you, Madam President, Excellency, Madam Vjosa Osmani Sadriou. You are not here for the first time in these rooms, and I would like also to thank again the Secretary General of the Österreichische Industriellen Vereinigung for hosting us again here. It's not the first time, and you, Madam President, made a few years ago a remarkable speech here that showed your conviction, your European conviction, and your service to your country, and that made a big impression on us. Our society is trying to, let's say, to develop the ideas of Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi, who was, in modern times, the first one who initiated the European integration immediately after the First World War, and he could do a tremendous work just by himself, one could say, in the beginning, and then with many friends in politics, in science, people like Albert Einstein included, to prepare what we then saw after 1945 that was only possible thanks to his work. So we try to keep not only his memory, but his approach to European integration, respecting the diversity, but still have this pan-European view. We have to find, still to find in many ways, the right balances for the future challenges, that's for sure. We try to do that in supporting some, scientific work historically, but also trying to bring in ideas for today's integration movements. We do it also by publication. We are just, and I think we even have a team here from the Austrian television, Ö3, who will do a film shortly, is already working on a film on Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi and to show what he can still bring today with his ideas to further the European ideas. But of course, one important activity we have is to deliver every 2 years the European Prize Coudenhove-Kalergi. We paused for 2 years and then we had the happy surprise that of the different candidates the Presidium presented to our members, we had ex aequo 2 ladies as the next European Prize winners. That was the President of Moldova, whom we already could deliver the prize, and now, of course, a very special pleasure to be able to deliver to you, Madam President, this prize that has a long history since the 70s. Many heads of states like you and many other European politicians, scientists that have helped to build a peaceful Europe have already received this prize. I won't mention them all. I would just mention that it's the first time again that we have 2 ladies that, as I said, with ex aequo, the same votes from our members. The last one was Madame Angela Merkel, some more than 10 years ago. So it's nice to be able to come back and have women prize winners. I think women in politics, that's at least my experience, and I think it's a historical experience. They are always a little bit better than men to put some unity among people. And so I don't want to do the laudatio because it will be much better done later on by our Vice President of the Society and member of the European Parliament, Lukas Mandl, who I know loves Kosovo and knows a lot about your country. But let me just perhaps mention three aspects that were striking me, beside, of course, your understanding of European integration. One is that you always have an eye on the youth of your country. And I think if we think of Europe's future, that is more important today than it ever was. And to help there, to have a good future, that is very important. The second thing I would like to mention is that you always also are going towards the most weakest members of your your family, your country. I think one can say your country is your family in some way, as we see very often. So these are two aspects I would just like to highlight. The third one is, as a lawyer, is of course very close to me, and that is your fight for the rule of law. I think that is most important. You have played a big role for your constitution, for making your constitution possible. And I think that on the European level also becomes more and more important, and even more so on the global level. What we see in many ways, in many political actions, we see a total neglect of the human dignity. And human dignity has to be defended, first of all, by the rule of law. And rule of law, of course, is best put forward, provided by democratic principles. And there, Madam President, you have done a lot to bring stable situation. Of course, when we say human dignity, every person has the same dignity given to them, and we know that very well from the Human Rights Declaration of the European Union, but we see a lot happening in this world, not least by armed conflicts, where human dignity is totally vexed, to say it like that. So I think that is a fight that is most important, and to which I want to congratulate you and encourage you very especially. As I said, it's not very easy. You have to find some balances between minorities, pluralities, and that's part of life. But I'm sure that you will go on to really make a big contribution, not only for Kosovo, but as an example for many in Europe on how to deal in a so important position as being head of state of your country. So congratulations, thank you for accepting the prize, and we look forward to deliver it afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prince Nikolaus. Madam President, Prince Nikolaus alluded to the very long and dignified list of very dignified people that have received this prize. And so it is only just that we have an equally dignified list of orators for this evening. We have Emperor Franz Joseph guarding over the ceremony, and so I'm very happy to have his grand-nephew, Archduke Karl, deliver us the next speech.
Madam President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people have been greeted this evening, but I want to do one special greeting. And I want to tell you that I would like to greet your daughters, because I think I remember very well when I had your age, and my father would take me along to different events. And he was at that time really, instilling in me this interest for politics and what values really mean and how I can help my parents achieve that, to be able to do it later myself. And that's why I think it's really, really great, and I thank you very much that you brought your family and your husband, that you are all coming to this special event when we're talking about values, because of course all that we're dealing with here, also in this heritage of Coudenhove-Kalergi and of all the very eminent persons that were receiving that prize before, it is about values. And when we're talking about the people that were receiving the prize before, of course, there is one person I have to mention, which is one of your predecessors, who was getting the prize 20 years before you. It was Ibrahim Rugova. And again, in this connection, I want to mention that for me it was the same. Of course, my father was also taking me along to these events. And it was a special relationship that he had with President Rugova. It was, I would say, a relationship that was going far beyond a professional relationship. There was really a personal friendship there, all the way to the extent that when my father was wearing a shawl, he was always kind of relating to President Rugova, who historically, as we know, was always wearing a shawl. He was getting, at the time, the Coudenhove-Kalergi Prize for his clear pan-European engagement for an independent Kosovo. And before that, of course, I think one has to mention that out of the political situation he was growing from, he was also, and my father was very much engaged in that, the European Parliament, the Sakharov Prize. I always like to mention that it's the Sakharov Prize for the freedom of thought. And that was at the time not something which was automatically and understandable, but I think it was incredibly important that he at that stage was first awarded the Sakharov Prize, later the Coudenhove-Kalergi Prize, to kind of show this historic dimension. This was in 2004, and we should not forget that 1 year before that happened was the Thessaloniki summit, which was talking about Southeast Europe, how Southeast Europe would get a perspective of the European Union, and the importance for this region of Europe, that this region of Europe would actually have for the stability and security in Europe that would develop here. The necessity for stability and security has not changed. We are in the middle of a new structuring of Europe, and we have seen this within the last 110 years, several times, that a complete new structuring of Europe was taking place. We have seen it in 1918 after the First World War, in 1945 after the Second World War. We have seen it again in 1989, and this was a little bit of a botched restructuring, I would say. We were all very happy when the Iron Curtain was falling and a good part of Europe was gaining its freedom. But what happened in the West was that the West basically was cashing into their into a perceived security, and they were not investing into the necessary the peace dividend was cashed in, and it was not enough invested into the security of the continent, which basically was leading us to an existential question to all of Europeans, and that is, do we want to play a role in the world in the future, or are we just passengers on the train of history? And I think the Balkan region was understanding much more the development, what was happening, and the dangers that were engaged in it. They were going through several wars and conflict in order to understand this, whereas the rest of Europe did rely on the US and did not really understand the problem of that concept. Geopolitically, Europe was not really existing anymore. Putin's strategy of energy as a weapon and corrupting politicians was not understood in the West. And the so-called New World Order has changed since '89 several times, from a bipolarity of the Cold War between the Warsaw Pact and NATO, to the monopolarity when the US was calling the shots, let's put it this way, no pun intended, for some time alone and deciding what was happening, to a multipolarity where regional forces were developing over the last couple of years, to a situation as we have it today, since a couple of months or a couple of weeks. And I'm a little bit bereft of words to say how to describe foreign politics currently. Because if I'm looking at what is happening in the United States, it always gives me the vision of foreign politics not being constructed with little Lego blocks in a multicolored and multifaceted way as foreign politics really needs, but foreign politics suddenly is built out of these huge roadblocks that are put into the way of other countries and that really do not allow free functioning of international politics, and it is much more shooting from the hip than the construction of foreign politics. On the other side, of course, Moscow wants to position itself as a world power, and they started doing this when they saw that America was withdrawing from Syria and they could go into Syria and taking a much more stronger role in world politics. And at the same time, China wanted to be the world power #1, whereas they had a great problem and still have a great problem with that, and that's the Chinese demography, where they will get old before they get rich. And therefore also China has to work hard on what they are doing. Regional powers also want to play a bigger role, whether it is the BRICS countries or Turkey or Iran. But especially China and Russia have a different concept of the fundamental principles of society. There is this interesting word of the dragon bear that gets used to describe where do the Chinese and the Russian interests actually overlap. China has shown through its attack on Ukraine that it is leading a war against Western values, against freedom, democracy, rule of law, as it has been mentioned here before, human rights, market economy. It is not a war between countries, but it is a war between ideologies. Ukraine, with the successes it had, Ukraine was not only a success story, we know that, it had great difficulties, but with the success that it had, with Western values, it became a threat to Russia because it was a good example. Some politicians then thought it is enough to say we are supporting Ukraine as long as it takes, and I have to tell you that this expression "as long as it takes" is really getting very much on my nerves, because it just covers up the cowardice of not wanting to define what it really means, what it means, how as long as it takes, what is actually the goal that should be described, that this conflict should bring in our interest, not necessarily particularly in the interest of non-Europeans, but we are Europeans, we have to see what our interest is. And that is definitely the integrity and sovereignty of the Ukraine in the borders of 1994. It is, of course, reparations, but I think since I am not in an active political position, I can use this expression. Of course, we should also say we are interested in a regime change in Russia as a result of this conflict, because we want to deal with Russia as a successful and rich neighbor, but not as a criminal state that is misusing the state as a gas station that they have kidnapped, and they are blackmailing the entire world with the prices as a success of that, the succession of that. We are in Europe back in a situation like we were once before in 1938, 1939, when the barbarians were knocking at our doors. And today's Chamberlains and Daladiers are talking about peace in our time, but this is actually, of course, not possible with Russia. China also wants to reinterpret values, because this is where the interest of change of values overlaps between Russia and China, in the way that they are redefining what are human rights, by changing the collective, the human rights, which is applying to individual persons, to the collective rights, and not necessarily applying to the individual, but also where they are redefining what is the question of private property. And of course, when we look what's happening with patents or what's happening with reverse engineering, private property is not playing such a big role anymore. But history tells us, if we want to keep our values, the values that we have recognized as good and important values for our future, we have to defend them and we have to fight for them. Democracy and human rights cannot be taken for granted. And one has to say here that sometimes, which I would call a stabilocracy, is not replacing that. Stabilocracy does not mean stability, and I'm sure you understand what I mean with stabilocracy when we're looking at some of our, sometimes here in Vienna, very close neighbors that are taking into consideration and taking the risk of damage to the rule of law and damage to democracy in order to give a perceived stability of a country where it's not. We have to fight for democracy, we have to fight for the rule of law. It is also very dangerous when we see that in some places a vacuum is happening in politics. This is not acceptable, And if Europe is not active, then other countries are actually mixing into these vacuums. We have seen the destructive role of Russia in the Balkans, which I put to some degree definitely as a fault of Europe, of not offering enough solution and supports to actually integrate the Balkans better into this case. Enlargement needs a new dynamic. I know we're talking about families. My father was always talking about Europe, the enlargement, saying the further we can expand the border of freedom, the more security the entire construction is becoming. So enlargement, I think, is a fundamental need for the European Union. We have many countries that are in line to do that. We have the discussion about Ukraine going on. And I think it's always important to point out how much the integration into the European Union also means stability and security. We heard from so many countries when they were discussing should we opt rather for NATO or rather for the European Union. I mean, I'm a passionate European, and as such, I always like to point out that on one side, of course, there's Article 42, paragraph 7 of the EU Treaty, which is talking about the mutual security support, which is actually a stronger wording than in NATO. But then, of course, there's also the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union, Article 222, which is dealing with solidarity, with necessary solidarity between the countries of the European Union when it comes to questions like terrorism. So there is a great security, not only the military security of NATO, but there is a great security within the European Union. And that is definitely also a role for Kosovo, and a role that you are playing and emphasizing a lot, of which we are very happy and very proud. Kosovo is clearly a Western-oriented country. And I think to some of our very Western members, we should emphasize this all the more to have a better understanding about the history of Kosovo, and that it cannot necessarily compare with certain other regions of Europe that should not necessarily be named at that stage. One of the points where Kosovo has shown its incredible European spirit is, of course, also when it came to the sanctions against Russia, which Kosovo has carried under your guidance and under your leadership in a strong way, and we Europeans should be very grateful for that. At the conference, 100 Years Pan-Europa, in November 2022, you, President Osmani, were declaring from this pulpit that I'm standing on here right now, that the Republic of Kosovo will file the application for membership in the European Union, which then actually was happening within days or a couple of weeks. It was happening the following month. It was happening in December 2022. We all are very proud that you are receiving the Coudenhove-Kalergi Prize today here with us. And we hope that this European prize is not only considered a recognition for the politics of Kosovo under President Osmani, but it is also a motivation for the European Union to declare the candidacy status to be able to start the membership negotiations. And this is what we all have to work on. Congratulations from all pan-Europeans to you on that occasion. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is an esteemed member of the European Society, member of the European Parliament, and an absolute expert on Kosovo, Lukas Mandl.
I'm in particular thankful to our moderator, Severin Meister, who has greeted all the distinguished guests, all the excellencies already, because it would just be impossible for me to mention each and everybody And if I look into the crowd, I even see more dignitaries than have already been mentioned. So we are one family today in this special endeavor of awarding not any head of state, I will come back to that a bit later, but this head of state with this very special European prize. Anda in tua miedita. You're very brave joining your mother and your father today for this very special event. And I want to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, that I had the privilege to experience Vjosa Osmani-Sadriou plenty of times during a lot of events, but I don't remember that she would have taken all her family with her that often. So it's a privilege for us, Vjosa Osmani-Sadriou, Excellency, President of the Republic of Kosovo, that you came with all your family. Thank you for that. As somebody who uses to hold speeches for professional reasons, this is very special, even unique for me, because doing a laudatio for a head of state maybe occur once in a lifetime. That's the expectation. So I was thinking I will share with you first facts and figures, since Vjosa Osmani-Sadriou is not only an elected official, a head of state, but also an academic. Facts and figures matter to you, matter to us, matter to Kosovo, and are important for your leadership. Then I will share the one or the other thought on Kosovo and the leadership of Vjosa Osmani. And then there might be the one or the other request to the distinguished participants of this event today, because the story is not over. We're not looking only backwards, we're looking forward. And this is also something I want to share with you. Now, a head of the national football team of Austria once was asked, Josef Hickersberger, for those who know, he was asked whether in the next game the best players will play. And he said, maybe not the best, but the right ones. And this is always something to think about. So I would doubt that I would be the best to make a laudatio for Vjosa Osmani-Sadriou. I mean, I hold your mobile and I use it maybe twice a year or 3 times a year, because I'm a bit hesitant to use a mobile of a head of state. So I can't pretend to be best friends day and night or something like that, but maybe I can do it right today, since it might be true what Nikolaus von Liechtenstein has stated, and I put it that way. With us is also Josef Höchtl today, long-standing member of the Austrian Parliament, kind of a mentor for me in early times, in district level and so on, but a mentor remains a mentor always. And he was always encouraging to go beyond borders, also beyond the borders of Austria when you do politics in Austria. And doing that, and that's the word you have used, Nikolaus von Liechtenstein, by doing that, it's really true, in this international community, Kosovo became what one has to call my first love. This is it, and this is why I want to do it right today when it comes to the president of this marvelous, very, very special state. So the facts and figures will come in a second. Just want to share with you my first experience I remember with Vjosa Osmani personally. It was in 2018. It was in the European Parliament in Strasbourg. That's also the place where you asked me, Nikolaus von Liechtenstein, in a cafe in the city of Strasbourg, whether I will do the laudatio for Vjosa Osmani. And years before, 2018, we had the so-called joint parliamentary assembly of the Kosovo Parliament and the European Parliament. Vjosa Osmani was a parliament member at that time. And in European Parliament, days are long. And of course, you listen when others speak all the time, each and every word, usually. And it was a very long meeting. And you can imagine the plenary of this meeting room. It was not a hemicycle big plenary of the European Parliament, but a meeting room. But it looks similar to the big plenary. And people would speak not from the center of the room, but from their seats. And I had my headphones on, because sometimes people were speaking Albanian, sometimes people were speaking various languages of the European Union, and sometimes people were speaking English, which I usually listen to in my headphones. And if somebody speaks English, of course, it's not translated, it's directly transferred, the headphone. And I was listening in a regular mood, I would say. And then I heard something in my headphones which was different, more visionary, stronger, academically substantial, I would say. And I was looking around who was speaking, because people speak from their seats. You don't immediately see who is speaking at the moment. I was looking around. Who is that who speaks so visionary about the future of Kosovo and the European integration and the relation with the European Union? And that's my first impression of Vjosa Osmani, that time in 2018. That was also our first handshake that day, and I immediately afterwards called the that time ambassador of the Republic of Kosovo, Excellency Sami Ukeli, who is also with us today, who was my first and I would say best lecturer on Kosovo for me all the time. He's also with us today, and he explained to me what's going on, or let's say he helped me to understand the political landscape better. And this was the first impression, and I was obviously not wrong, and I was not the only one thinking this is a very visionary politician, because Dr. Vjosa Osmani Sadriou is the 6th president of the Republic of Kosovo. She has been elected on April 4th, 2021. She previously served as the Speaker of Parliament, and after being elected as a Member of Parliament of the Republic of Kosovo in 5 consecutive mandates. She graduated from the Faculty of Law of the University of Pristina and received her master's and doctorate degrees in international law from the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, that's in the United States. She advocates for an impartial and professional justice system, has strongly supported extensive rule of law reforms in Kosovo. She relentlessly championed women's rights, particularly regarding their participation in peace and security processes, as well as their economic and political empowerment. Vjosa Osmani Sadriou is devoted to raising awareness of and supporting children with special needs, and committed to empowering disadvantaged and marginalized groups in Kosovo. In the February 2021 election, she achieved a historic level of popular support, which then also led to her election in parliament as the 6th president of the Republic. Prior to that, Vjosa Osmani was the first woman to have served as the Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Kosovo, having been elected to the post on February 3, 2020. She also served as acting President of the Republic of Kosovo between November 2020 and March 2021. In previous terms, as a Member of Parliament, she chaired the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs, the Committee on European Integration, and was the Deputy Chair of the Committee on Constitutional Reform. What a vita of this young lady. That deserves a hand, isn't it? I have pointed out before that I have met Vjosa Osmani Sadriou first time in 2018. In fact, she has been politically active beside her academic career, beside raising a family, for a quarter of a century already. And before that, we must not forget that today, I think, Vjosa, even as a child, as a teenager, you have witnessed the war. So you're among the rare number of heads of state of this planet who know what they are talking about when they talk about war. You are a female leader. You contribute to gender equality, not only in your policies, which is important, and I encourage each and every of my species, men, some of us are gentlemen, to follow the UN motto of he for she. So to contribute to gender equality is not an issue that women should do if they want to, or something like that. It's something each and every one of us is called to do. but you are not doing it only due to your policies, but also due to your example, Vjosa Osmani. You're not any head of state, I said that. Maybe it's impossible to call a head of state any head of state, but you're definitely a very special head of state, because you're heading the youngest state of Europe. The youngest state of Europe, the Republic of Kosovo, going through a tough time. And we also have to state it today, still not recognized by 5 EU member states, which is nothing but a shame. It's a shame for the European Union and for the European countries. My previous appointment today was with representatives of the State of Israel, and it was a particular joyful moment when Israel has recognized Kosovo now nearly 5 years ago. So Israel even provided a good example for these 5 non-recognizing member states. Kosovo, the country you lead, Vjosa Osmani, is a country of European spirit, more than many EU member states. A country with people of confidence, even through struggle, even through very difficult times, even still discriminated as people in many different ways, such as UN membership, such as the path to EU membership. Even in these conditions, people remain more European and more confident in their future. That's an example not for any state or politician, that's an example for all of us personally, how your people behave, Vjosa Osmani. What you do is inspirational, Vjosa Osmani Sadriou. It's inspiration. It can lead all of us to think differently, to focus more on priorities. It has been said that you would be committed to democracy and rule of law. And I've already stated, you know what it means to not have conditions of democracy and rule of law. Even worse, to have conditions of war. You are contributing to what is called the Euro-Atlantic future of Kosovo. And maybe nobody in Europe or worldwide would know how important the Euro-Atlantic relation is, because I call it now safeguarding peace and the path to peace, what was only possible for Kosovo due to this Euro-Atlantic relation. And not many people do know what can happen if there is a lack of partnership and confidence and mutual reliability in this Euro-Atlantic relation. This is why your contribution matters most here, Vjosa Osmani Sadriou. Thank you for that. Last point on these, I would call it policy issues of your presidential office, is about the international relations of Kosovo. And here I dare to compare Kosovo to my home country, Austria. And I've done it several times already. The history books tell about Austria more than 100 years ago. It would have been a state, literally, a state nobody believed in. And it led to crimes, worst crimes in mankind's history, committed by many Austrians. It led from bad to worse, a state nobody believed in. These days we are celebrating 80 years of the end of World War II, 70 years of Austria's States Treaty independence, and 30 years of EU integration of Austria, which worked for us, luckily. So even more we should work for others that it will work too. And actually, Kosovo is a small country. Austria is a small country. If there is a lesson from history for Austria, then it's important to have relations in Europe and globally, to have strong international relations, to reach out every day internationally. And if I may say it in this moment of celebration today, that way, Vjosa Osmani, I imagine it's not easy to do that every day. But you are the one, you are the hand of Kosovo outreach to the world, and Kosovo needs it existentially. Thank you for doing it every day, also as a Kosovo representative, to keep this international relation. Thank you for that. Or to put it in one word, a country like Kosovo needs friends, a country like Austria needs friends. Each country needs friends, and it's, by the way, wrong, even if I admire the person who's quoted with it, that a state would never have friends. That's not true. Otherwise, I wouldn't know so many friends of Kosovo. I know them. Obviously, a state has friends. It has been mentioned that there were other awardees in history. People like Ronald Reagan, people like Helmut Kohl, and people like your predecessor, the founder of the Republic of Kosovo, the visionary, the one who is also called the Gandhi of the Balkans. Maybe Gandhi should be called the Rugova of India. Would be well deserved, but he was a bit earlier. And the philosopher, the visionary of non-violent resistance. A novelist, imagine, a novelist as a president, a novelist as a state founder. It could be invented that way. It happened in Kosovo. This is Ibrahim Rugova, and you follow his path, Vjosa Osmani, not only receiving this award as he did, but also in your policies, also in your commitment, and also in your, at the same time, patriotic and global commitment. Last point, and now it comes for all of you. You're not here only to listen, I have to tell you. You can't run away easily. There's a big difference between Ronald Reagan and Vjosa Osmani Sadriou, and between Helmut Kohl and Vjosa Osmani, and even between Ibrahim Rugova and Vjosa Osmani. The missions of these awardees of this prize have already been accomplished. But the mission of this lady, Vjosa Osmani Sadriou, is by far not yet accomplished. And if we know something from history, and if we can feel something in the air in geopolitics today, then it is that a person with such a commitment, with such a vision, with such hard work for her country and her people and their future and their European integration will need partners. And that's you. That's what I request from you. It's not a prize for something that was in the past. It's a prize that shows a commitment of all who are present here today. When the prize will be handed over to Vjosa Osmani Sadriou, it's a commitment of you to contribute to Kosovo's future. And there are plenty of opportunities for that, by the way. You can invest in IT sector, you can invest in digitalization in Kosovo, you can invest in the youth, which is well educated, autodidactively in many cases. You can invest in many different fields. And you can contribute politically to a faster and more stable European integration of the youngest state of Europe, the Republic of Kosovo, and this is the best way to walk the talk. We talk today about Vjosa Osmani's achievements and her big commitment, but to walk this talk means to live the partnership with the Republic of Kosovo. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With this, we can come to the most important part of the evening. One administrative announcement quickly is we have a couple of official photographers, and so we would like to limit the pictures at the moment to all the official photographers. There will be a chance for private pictures afterwards. May I ask on stage Prince Nikolaus Dr. Heinz Wimpissinger, the Secretary General of the European Society, and most importantly, Her Excellence, the President.
Madam President, we have good and strong way, wise throughout, who more than deserve this prize. Congratulations, all the best wishes with you and Kosovo. Congratulations.
Complete the song.
Thank you.
Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency, President Dr. Vjosa Osmani. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Dankeschön. Faleminderit shumë. Your Serene Highness, Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, distinguished ambassadors, members of the Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi Pan-European Foundation, honored guests, friends and colleagues, dear MEP Mandel, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for the kind words. And thank you to all of you. Thank you to the members of the Austrian Parliament for joining us. In 1992, long before he actually received this same award, the Kalergi Pan-European Foundation Award, in this very same room again, the founding father of our republic and the architect of our independence, President Ibrahim Rugova, spoke in front of the large audience about Kosovo and about the human rights violations that we were all going through under Milosevic. But he also spoke about the hopes of the people of Kosovo to live in freedom, to live in independence, and to live in democracy. Freedom and peace in Kosovo, as well as in the wider region, he argued, were the cornerstone of a peaceful and free Europe. He also warned at that time, in 1992, about the appeasement that many were offering to dictator Milosevic. But as it was proven then, and as it is proven now, again and again, appeasement of dictators never, ever leads to long-lasting peace. At that very difficult time for us, in the 90s, our people found an early supporter in Austria. Among organizations such as Pan-Europa, among human rights activists, among media, journalists, as well as among politicians. One of the strongest early supporters was undoubtedly Otto von Habsburg, becoming a strong voice not just within the Pan-Europa movement and the European Parliament, but also well beyond, as you rightly pointed out, such a strong believer in our people and in our president. Later on, this strong support continued through the visionary leadership of politicians such as Alois Mock, Albert Rohan, and so many others, just to name a few. No wonder Vienna was then and still known as not just the capital of Austria, but more than that, the capital of Southeast Europe. For us, it was not just the center of Southeast Europe, it was the place where we found a voice. At that time, politicians from all political spectrums, as well as civil society and media here in Austria, became steadfast supporters of Kosovo and our right to be free and sovereign, as well as our people's right to self-determination and fundamental freedoms and human rights. Austria became the first country to recognize diplomas from Kosovo students issued by the parallel system built by President Rugova in defiance of Milosevic. And Austria did that in order to allow our young people to pursue their education in Austria, but this was so much more than just a symbolic move or gesture. This was aimed at supporting our fundamental human right to education and also served as a cornerstone to a capacity building process within our institutions from which we benefit even today. This support from Austria in our hour of need became the bedrock of excellent relations between Kosovo and Austria, which continue to thrive also today. When I first stepped into politics, I was really young. As it was mentioned by Lucas, it's already more than 25 years. Perhaps when I first started, I was way too young to fully grasp the weight of the path ahead. But I believe old enough to understand that if I wanted to serve my country and my people, there were two sure ways to do it. One was through education, and the other was through the hard, often imperfect work of politics. I learned some of the most valuable lessons, not really from textbooks or from lectures, but from the quiet strength of my parents and the stories passed down about my grandparents, which were stories of hardship, stories of them being oppressed like all the people of Kosovo, and most importantly, stories of resilience and dignity, and the unshakable belief in the power of freedom. Even as a child, I understood that in Kosovo, freedom was an ideal fiercely and long fought for, and deeply sacred. When you grow up as a child under oppression, and when you live beneath the shadow of an apartheid-like regime, and then go through a genocidal war, your dreams begin to narrow. You stop dreaming what might be the dreams of your peers in other countries. And in fact, you dream of something much simpler, but so much more profound, which is the right to live and be free, the right to human dignity, and the right to shape your own future. Fast forward to today, those dreams have become the building blocks of the independent, free, and sovereign Republic of Kosovo, which is young, but very determined. A republic that was tested, however, is very courageous. A country that is still healing from the scars of a genocidal war, but proudly contributing shoulder to shoulder with our friends and partners, contributing to peace, security, and cooperation across borders, and wherever and whenever needed. A country that believes in Europe more than anyone else you can find in this continent, because the values that shape Europe were the ones that gave us hope when darkness seemed overwhelming. Now, the Pan-European Union, founded by the visionary Richard von Coudenhove-Kalergi more than 100 years ago, was created with a bold idea: to lay the groundwork for a peaceful, democratic, and integrated Europe. one that could help the continent move forward after the devastation of the First World War. The example of the Pan-European Union is a demonstration that no matter where you sit in the world, people are united by the shared ideals of a better, more prosperous, and more peaceful future. This movement embraced Kosovo and its people when very few around the world did, when it mattered most, in fact, helping us have access to a platform through which our stories, our voices, and our experiences would be shared with the world. And those who gave us a voice when we didn't have one are the friends that we will never forget, never ever. Aware of the impactful work this organization has done over the past century and the support it has given to my country, especially in our most difficult times, it is with deep gratitude and profound humility that I accept the Coudenhove-Kalergi Prize for Europe today. As I see it, this award carries a powerful legacy, one that affirms that peace, democracy, and unity across Europe are not simply ideals to aspire to, but responsibilities we must all embrace. And I have often said that receiving an award as a president is never just a tribute to the individual. It is first and foremost a recognition of the achievements of the people that I represent and the country that I represent. I stand here because of the resilient people of Kosovo. I stand here because the people of Kosovo have believed in the ideals of freedom, democracy, and human rights for as long as history remembers. But most importantly, I stand here in tribute to the suffering and pain that my people have endured. I'm here to remind the world of the story of Nana Ferdonije, whose husband and 4 sons were forcibly taken by Milosevic's forces. It has now been more than a quarter of a century since then, and Nana Ferdonije still hopes for their return. Despite this unimaginable pain, she and the mothers of thousands who still remain forcibly disappeared from the war, has dedicated her life to a tireless call for truth and justice. I also stand here in solidarity with more than 20,000 survivors of sexual violence during the last war in Kosovo. I stand here because of and in support of Vasfije Krasniqi, Shureta Tahiri, Ramadan Nishori, and countless other courageous survivors who speak not only for themselves, but for countless others silenced for way too long. Their voices today have become the voices of survivors across the world. And I also stand here particularly for the thousands of children of Kosovo who were my age and much younger during the war, but whose lives were cut short by war, and whose memory compels us to build peace so that our past never becomes their future, so that they never, ever have to go through what we had to go through. So today, I'm honored to join you all, together with my wonderful family, together with our staff, our embassy, and friends from Kosovo, from our diaspora, but also from so many others who showed to the world, against all odds, what is a testament to what democracies can achieve when they stand together in defense of the values of freedom and human rights, but also a testament that nothing can stand on the way of a people who wants to be free. Nothing. most humbly receive this award on behalf of all the citizens of Kosovo, a nation that has endured centuries of hardship, but never surrendered their dreams of a democratic and European future. This award is not just a personal honor, it is rather a recognition of our collective journey, a journey shaped by a long struggle for democracy, the fight for human rights, and the unyielding belief in the rule of law. It is also a reminder of the delicate path we continue to work forward, a path where our values are tested by new threats, where our achievements are challenged every single day, and our progress too often is targeted by malign forces. But even in the face of these challenges, we do not bend, because we know where we come from, we know what we stand for, and we absolutely know where we are going. Kosovo never had a second doubt. Kosovo never flirted with other forces. Kosovo knows that there's only one path, and that is the European Union, where we truly belong. We stand firm because our beliefs are firm. We are the strongest believers in a Europe that is whole, free, and at peace. Kosovo is a country born of the will of its people and carried forward by the unmatched hope of generations who dared to believe in freedom and peace at a time when it cost them with their lives. We are guided by the ideals of Europe, and we are anchored in the belief that our rightful place is within the European Union, as well as a full and equal member of the Euro-Atlantic family. Coming back to 2 decades ago, when President Rugova, our founding father, stood before this very foundation, honored for the same values that we celebrate today, receiving this exact same honor and prize, I must say that to walk in his footsteps is a privilege second to none. To continue his legacy, for me, is more than just a responsibility. It is a mission. It's a lifetime mission, because his vision and mission for an independent, sovereign, democratic Kosovo, fully integrated within the European Union and NATO, and with a special relationship with the United States, guides us to this day. It is a vision deeply entrenched into the hearts and minds of the people of Kosovo, 97% of whom, 97% believe in Europe and support the European integration of our country. And I work every day to deliver on that responsibility and to carry out this mission, not only as a president, but also as a citizen of a country that owes its very existence to that pursuit of democracy and to that promise of peace, to the pursuit of ideals that have served as the bedrock of the European continent. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that this moment is taking place in Austria is not just symbolic, but it's profoundly personal to all of us. Austria stood with Kosovo in our darkest hours. When we needed friendship, Austria was there for us. When we needed support, Austria offered its hand. This nation and its people reminded us that even in times of struggle, humanity can shine through. So to be honored here in this land, for us, is more than just a ceremony. It is a testament to the bonds we share that go back centuries. It is a testament to the values we defend and to the future we are building and aspiring together, to the Europe of the future. The dream of a better Europe is not just abstract to us, it is very much alive. It is not distant, it's our daily ambition. A Europe whole, free, and at peace is the strongest aspiration that keeps us together. But let us be clear, that dream is incomplete without Kosovo, the youngest Europeans. I'm truly convinced that Kosovo and the European Union is not just a goal of ours. It is also Europe's opportunity, an opportunity to finish what it started, to unite what malign politics tried to divide then and what they are trying to divide now, and to embrace every nation that believes in the promise of democracy and in the power of peace. Kosovo in the European Union is a chance for Europe to prove once more that its strength lies in its unity and its purpose lies in its ideals. A Kosovo in the European Union is a win for Europe. A European Union with members that truly believe in it, fight for it, and for the principles in which it stands. Exactly in this soil, in this continent, is where democracy was born. The European soil has witnessed revolutions, renaissances, and renewals. This soil has known tragedy, but always triumphed over it. This soil is witnessing a tragedy now, but freedom and peace will triumph over and over again. As Ukraine stands bravely in defense of its freedom, Europe finds itself at crossroads, facing one of the most consequential moments in modern history. What we do now in this chapter will shape the direction of our shared future for generations to come. Therefore, this is not time to retreat, but rather a time to reach across borders, to forge new partnerships and alliances and strengthen existing ones, and to let solidarity thrive. And at a time when autocracy knocks on democracy's door, these ambitions and principles are more important than ever. The world is watching. Our children are watching. And one day, future generations will look back and they'll ask, what did we do when it matters most? And this is what keeps me going. Because I want to be able to look at my daughters and all of the children of Kosovo in their eyes when they're grown and tell them that I did my best when it mattered most. That we didn't take democracy for granted, but we fought for it day in and day out. And when the path was hardest, we didn't falter. That's exactly when we stood the tallest, and that's exactly when we fought the hardest. We never gave up on believing in democracy, in peace, in prosperity, because we know what happens when those values are abandoned. We've seen what the absence of these values can bring. We've lived through the opposite of freedom and democracy. And so we pressed on with strength, with purpose, and with the unshakable belief that we could build something better. Because more than anything, I want to leave behind a better Kosovo, one that thrives, that succeeds, that shows the world what is possible when a nation is given the chance to be free. The values that we celebrate today are the values that have shaped our humanity's greatest successes. So I really do hope that these values will guide us in ensuring that the world we leave behind is one of dignity, of peace, and enduring hope for generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends, in conclusion, I want to say that Europe is a living responsibility, one that demands courage, not just from the big and the powerful, but from every nation that has dared to defend peace when it was easier to surrender, and to speak truth when silence was safer. In the soul of Europe, it is often the smallest of nations that carry the greatest of truths, that freedom is earned, that democracy must be nurtured, and just peace must never be compromised. Ours must be the generation that restores the moral compass of Europe, where unity is not built by just some economic interests, but by conviction. And in that vision, we do not ask for Europe to just open its doors. We ask for Europe to recognize that we have been contributing to its foundations for centuries, step by step, with every act of justice, with every act of sacrifice, and most importantly, with every act of hope. Because Europe is not a distant dream. It is who we are. We are Europe. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Dankeschön. Faleminderit shumë. Thank you.
Madam President, thank you very, very much for your powerful words, and thank you for allowing everybody in this room to experience why you deserve this prize. This concludes tonight's ceremony, and I think if there's one thought to take home for everybody, then it is the vision of Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi that we heard breathe through all of the speeches that we heard today, and that is that Europe is built on values. Europe is not supposed to be a centralized bureaucracy. It's supposed to be a community of different people that share the same values. And I think you exemplify that, and that is why you received this prize today. So thank you very, very much for coming here. Another European value that's very important is the value of hospitality. And even though it is sadly impossible for us to offer the same hospitality that we would experience would we be in Kosovo right now, on behalf of the European Society and on behalf of Prince Nicholas, I would like to invite you all to step outside to the little reception that we have prepared there. Thank you very much.